Our next speaker is Ashley Dabb, and she actually rowed for a year at St. Joe's University, which is very exciting. Ashley is our next speaker. She currently serves as the Senior Communications Manager for the Pennsylvania Convention Center. Prior to joining the PA Convention Center, Ashley served as Chief Marketing Officer for the National Lacrosse League. She spent nearly a decade with the Philadelphia Union as well. In 2017, Ashley was recognized for her outstanding achievements as a recipient of the Leaders 40 Under 40 Marketing, and in 2018, she was named on the Forbes list of Women to Watch. Please welcome Ashley.
Hi, are we ready? Just making sure. So I'm going to try and follow Catherine. I am not going to do any slides, just sort of speak to you more about my experience, some key learnings that I have gathered along the way throughout my career here. So just a brief background. As was mentioned, I've been essentially in sports almost my whole life. I've started playing soccer when I was 5. I played basketball, softball all the way through high school. My freshman year at St. Joe's, I was on the crew team, and then I actually did rugby for a whole semester until my knees couldn't take that sport. And so then I actually started the club soccer team at St. Joe's. So I did that for my remaining 2 years, as well as playing club basketball. So I have a knack, I guess, for wanting to play sports all the time. And then while I was at St. Joe's, I learned that you could actually have a career in it. I went into college understanding that I wanted to do marketing, but really sort of wasn't sure exactly what that looked like after college. So I was very fortunate to have some great professors who introduced me, and similar to what Catherine said, I was able to network throughout my time at St. Joe's and get some internships. So I worked for the Trenton Thunder, which is the AA affiliate of the New York Yankees, for a few months. I worked at the rec office at St. Joe's. I worked with the Atlantic 10 Conference and did their A10 shootout as well during school. And then I was leaving college and basically fell in love with the city of Philadelphia. So I'm originally from North Jersey, which is not too far away, but I didn't want to go home, I guess. So I very much ramped up my job search. How do I get a job? Where do I get a job? What can I be doing? And continue along the sports line as well. So I was fortunate to, again, a lot of what Catherine said is very impactful, resonated with me also. I started applying for any sports job I could find. I wasn't sure if I was qualified, I just knew that I wanted to do this as a career. So I submitted, it's like it happened yesterday. I was sitting in the St. Joe's rec office before class because I used to open the field house, so I would be there at 6:30 in the morning, work until 8, and then go to class. But I was sitting there, and I saw that 2 months prior, the MLS Philadelphia 2010 team had just been announced. So it was an expansion franchise with Major League Soccer. And I said, it's sports, it's Philadelphia, let's see how it goes. There was no contact information, it was an info account. So I sent my resume and a cover letter and never expected to hear back, ever. Sort of thought it was a black hole and didn't expect to hear back. So fast forward maybe 2 or 3 days later, I'm again sitting in the rec office and I get a phone call from a Florida number. I assume that it's someone who's trying to sell me something. So I pick up and the person was from MLS Philadelphia, which eventually became the Philadelphia Union, as you may know it today. And he was trying to talk to me, but my service kept cutting out. So I literally sprinted from my chair out of the field house into the parking lot at St. Joe's to make sure I could hear him. I just kept saying, can you hear me? I looked like a Verizon commercial. Can you hear me? So I finally made it to the parking lot. And he said, we would like you to come in for an interview. And again, the whole experience, talking about it now, is still very surreal. So I went for an interview to a nondescript office building in Wilmington, Delaware. So I'm like, okay, go up the elevator, there's no sign, there's no indication that there's even a business there. So then I think I'm getting punked. I knock on the door, Nobody answers. Okay, this is not a good start. My resume, I'm dressed in my suit, and I'm like, okay. So I wait a couple minutes. The gentleman who was interviewing me was coming back from another meeting or lunch. He was the only person in that office. It was at least 1,000 square feet, and he was the only person with the only desk in that office. So there was no one else to answer. The interview went very well, and then the CEO at the time, an operating partner, was traveling on business, so that was the next step in the interview process. And so I went in, I don't know, about a week later, and this is all happening just as I'm about to graduate, so probably April of my senior year. So I go back and I meet with the CEO, and one of the first things that he recognizes is that I'm an athlete. So I thought it was relevant to our audience here today, because I think that was one of the big things that got me in the door. There's a lot of intangibles that come along with being in athletics, whether it is rowing, soccer, basketball, whatever you choose to do. And that's, I think, what helped shape my career as it is today. Some of the things, just maybe 3 key points that I'll speak about today, is what has helped me in my career. I think first is, as an athlete, you know how to prepare. So I think a lot of these skills are translatable from your athletic endeavors into a professional setting, again, whether it's in sports business. Now I'm at the convention center, so it's more hospitality based. But you, I think, potential employers or folks you're going to work with understand that you know how to prepare. You prepare for a game, you prepare for a race. You have a routine. You make sure your uniform is on point because look good, do good. You know how to train. You research your opponent. So all of these things, they are very much sports related, but you do the same in business. It's just in maybe a slightly different way. And you better believe that before every interview, I played the same Chris Brown song before I went in. So just like warming up for a game, like you always had your hype music, the same was true even for me for interviews. So I think, again, a lot of similarities from your athletic careers can translate into how you can be successful in business. There's a lot of intangibles that it helped instill in me anyway. Also, as an athlete, you know how to compete. So not just competitive in that it's cutthroat and I'm going to step on anyone I need to in order to move to the next level, but also that you know sportsmanship. So there's a competitive balance. You are able to get tasks done. You see them to completion. You've chased goals. So maybe it's a championship, maybe it's an individual award. And I think, again, employers recognize that. Whether you played, through college, some even semi-professionally, or it was recreationally. A lot of those things are instilled in you throughout your time in athletics. Communication is huge, so like for me, soccer, being in the midfield, it was all about communications. I was the annoying loud one on the field, but it's helpful for me in business because I use that to my advantage. It goes without saying, but not a lot of people are great at communicating directly and being able to do it often enough so that people feel like they're in the loop, that they're part of the team. All of these things, again, are things that I learned through sports and can translate into your business careers. The other thing too, like in competition, sometimes you have to change your game plan. So we may have come out with this great strategy and here's what we're going to do for our brand voice at the union or at the National Lacrosse League, let's say, but it's not working. It's not resonating. Perhaps the technology failed. You have to adjust. And so having that sort of think on your feet mentality from competitions was certainly helpful as well. And then I think third for me is you have the self-awareness to reassess. So not everything that we do in business is successful. And most times you learn more from your failures than your successes. So being able to sort of take it on the chin and learn from whatever happened. So whether it's hiring the wrong person or perhaps rolling out a program that wasn't as successful as you hoped, especially if you work in sports business, you have to constantly reassess because, as Catherine can attest, Philly fans are rabid diehards and we don't always win. So I worked at the union at a time where we were the shiny new toy, we were the new kid on the block. It's full circle moment. I was in the city wearing a zip up and it had the union logo. We had just announced the team brand and blue, white, gold, a little bit of light blue were the colors. And so the logo was a shield circle. And I was walking through the city. I was actually at the convention center, and we were setting up for a pop-up event that we were having that day. And I was walking through the city. Someone on the street stopped me because they thought that I was a police officer. So I was like, oh crap. Being in marketing, that's not what we're a sports team. And then I would say, oh, we're soccer. You know, they're like, oh, the Soul, you're in that league. No, that's arena football, different. So that was the start of my marketing journey there. Fast forward to, let me recall the date correctly, 2011. It was the first time we had made the playoffs at the Union, and I'm also a football fan, so we had the Houston Dynamo at home that afternoon. And a friend of mine worked there at the Union as well, and after the game we were going to go to the Eagles-Cowboys game. And it was a freezing day, of course, and we wore these gigantic parkas, but they were Union colors, so blue, gold, same logo. And we were going up the escalator in Lincoln Financial Field, and I think might have been on the club level maybe, and we had folks come up to us, not only ask us the score of the game, they knew that we were playing the Houston Dynamo, they knew that it was a playoff game, and they knew that it was a home-and-home series. So that even though I think we lost that day, that we would go to Houston and play another game. So that was sort of like a light bulb moment for me that, like, you know, the long days, the weekends, the nights do pay off. And if you just kind of keep grinding at it, there is, you can see the fruits of your labor. And so that was kind of a great thing. And, you know, again, it all started at the convention center, which now I'm working at. And so for me, I'm transitioning out of sports, but it's very much event-based. So in January, for instance, we'll have the bridal show in the beginning of the month, and then at the end of the month, I'll have the tattoo convention. So very different audiences. Right now we have PAX Unplugged, which is like board games. So again, a lot of similarities with the industry, but much more variety, I guess, on my plate. So the last thing I would say is, again, just being able to reassess your work and your work product and looking at it as much as you can, sort of objectively evaluating it. I think as an athlete, you're always focused on performance and how you can shave, you know, a couple minutes off your time, or go up a weight class, or edge out that rival that every year they come in and they beat you by 1 or 2 goals or X number of points. And I think that's been very helpful in translating a lot of those things from an athletic perspective into business. And then I think the other thing with reassessing is that you also know that, like, you're not always going to be the best. There may be someone in the room who's smarter than you, or who has more of a skill set for that particular thing. But because you've been an athlete, you know that there are ways that you can edge them out, and you can look at things that you have within your skill set that maybe differentiate you. To some extent, like Catherine said, like at the Union, the way that I kept gaining success was I did the little things that nobody else wanted to do. So I, you know, think about the worst thing that you could do. I raised my hand. I volunteered every time. At the Trenton Thunder, I was the mascot, so I was inside. The smelliest experience I've ever had. I had to wear a bike helmet. Your vision is only this much, so you couldn't see below you. You had to have a handler. But I volunteered every time. So there was another instance where they were like, oh, we need somebody to work this weekend. I had no idea what it was, put my hand up. Turned out that I was, oddly enough, going to be announcing a baseball clinic. And it was actually a paid gig, so as an intern, that was huge. So I always would do those things, even at the Union. We had this program, an initiative called Campout Night, which we allowed kids to camp out in Chester, inside the stadium, fully secure, of course, but to drive ticket sales. At first, people were like, nobody's going to do this. It's Chester. People have to go out and get their tents and come back in. They're not going to really want to do that. But we took a chance. We did it. I volunteered to sleep over. So I only did it twice, and then I moved to the National Lacrosse League. But I slept in the stadium at night with kids in tents. And again, that's, I think, the fun part of sports, because now I have those memories. And people will be like, you know, you don't have to do that. Like, there's someone else who can. But I think that's what differentiates you in the minds of maybe the boss, the CEO, or your counterparts, because you're asking interns to do X, Y, Z. You've done that same thing that you're asking the intern to do. So I think it also helps with the respect factor, that they know that you'll kind of walk the walk. And then just to kind of wrap up, I know there was sort of a piece about staying relevant. I think being involved, so thank you for having me today, I appreciate it. But mentoring others. I'm very involved in college campuses here locally. I've been an adjunct, and I will take any coffee, breakfast, lunch, whatever meeting with a student if they show the initiative and they want to reach out, talk, they want to say, hey, I have no idea how to get a job or look to further my career, can you help me? Sure, I'm happy to do it, because I have been fortunate enough to have people who have done that for me along the way, because, as self-aware as I would say I am, there are definitely some things I can always work on. And those people helped me focus on those areas to become more well-rounded. So I think it's important to always stay relevant, even if you're successful learning. I mean, technology is constantly changing many of our industries, and so whether it's reading trades, going to seminars like this, anything that you can do to sort of continually be a student has been, I think for me anyway, hugely helpful. So thank you for listening to me today, this afternoon. And I'm happy to connect with any of you after. If you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate. Thank you.